Okay, dokes, this is part 2 of our new topic on linked genes and dihybrid crosses. What we just discussed was in peas there are two traits that we can look at together. They are colour and they are texture. So what you see here is a very simplified cell contents for one of the heterozygous parents. So one of the yellow round peas that is expressing both the dominant traits but is also masking or carrying both of the recessive alleles. So it is heterozygous for both colour and for texture. And you can see that depending on the independent assortment that occurs during metaphase, you could have the two chromosome pairs in question lining up in this way, with yellow on the left, green on the right, round on the left and wrinkly on the right. So that could be one cell's decision to assort all of the pairs of chromosomes, in which case you would get these chromosomes separating into one daughter cell and these two separating into another. Or, equally as likely a scenario, you could have one of those pairs facing backwards. So in this case we've got the yellow and green that have swapped places. Now each of these scenarios will occur 50% of the time. In this case we've kept the bottom pairs the same, otherwise it would have the same outcome as over here. So what we would have now is the green allele being inherited with the round allele in the next daughter cell, and the yellow allele being inherited with the wrinkly allele in this daughter cell. So all four of these outcomes are different. Okay, and remember this is occurring in one organism's germ cell that is undergoing meiosis to make gametes. So this is occurring to produce the gametes in the sex organ of the heterozygous parent. Okay, so we would end up with 25% of the cells, the daughter cells, the gametes, having yellow and round, 25 having yellow and wrinkly, so due to the independent assortment we saw on the left of the last slide, or we would have another 25% inheriting green and round, and another 25 yellow and wrinkly. So that was the second scenario due to independent assortment. Okay, so we've got four different combinations there. We've got some gametes yellow and round, some green and wrinkly, some green and round, some yellow and wrinkly. Okay, and this is in the sex organ of one of those parents. So let's imagine that's happening twice, one in the female and one in the male pea plant. Okay, so this is the same thing, just being shown with all the genotypes underneath. So again, we were looking at the creation of gametes in one of these heterozygous parents. And if we imagine that that is occurring in both parents, so they are both producing 25% of four different types of gametes holding these alleles, well then we have 4 times 4 or 16 different ways that we can combine those gametes. So we could put the yellow round gamete with the green wrinkly gamete, for example. That could be one fertilization event. Or we could put the yellow round with the yellow round, or we could put the yellow wrinkly with the yellow round, or whatever. There are 16 different ways that these two parents producing 4 different types of gamete each could produce offspring, and all of those combinations are found below. So if we had the male gamete carrying the round allele and the yellow allele, and the female gamete carrying the round allele and the yellow allele, then the offspring that results from those two gametes meeting or fusing would be round round, homozygous for round, and yellow yellow, homozygous for yellow, and it would express as round and yellow. However, if we had a round yellow gamete fertilizing a wrinkly yellow gamete, we would have this combination of alleles, big R, little r, big Y, big Y. It would express the same way. It would look exactly the same on the outside as this round yellow pea, because we still have that round allele to dominate and mask the wrinkly allele that came from one of the parents. Okay, and I could go on and on, but we have more combinations that are going to lead to yellow and round than we have combinations that will lead to round and green, and wrinkly and yellow, and then the most rare combination is wrinkly and green, because we know that both parents will have to pass down the one of 4 gametes that carries wrinkly and yellow, and it has to be inherited. It has to be fertilized by a gamete that also carries the exact same alleles. So 1 out of 16 offspring will have that recessive phenotype. 3 out of 16 will be wrinkly and yellow, 3 out of 16 green and round, and 9 out of 16, the largest proportion, will express as the dominant trait for both. It will be round and yellow. So let's look at that in more detail. Okay, sorry about the transitions, I didn't think this through. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, just like a monohybrid punnett square, we have the gametes produced by one parent along the top and the gametes produced by the other parent along the side. So if we imagine this is the mother in the F1 generation that is heterozygous for both colour and texture, well, she can create 4 gametes, as we saw 2 slides ago. She can create some gametes 25% of the time that carry the big Y and the big R for yellow and round. 25% of the time she'll make gametes that carry yellow and wrinkly. 25% green and round, 25% green and wrinkly. The same can be said for dad. So 4 different combinations here for the different gametes that male heterozygous pea plant can create. And just like our dihybrid punnett square, we take those gametes, we fertilize them, and the outcome is expressed in these boxes here. So really, it's exactly the same as doing a monohybrid punnett square, but what you're doing is looking at how likely is it that these 2 alleles for 2 different genes can be inherited together and expressed in the phenotype. So if I just fill in the boxes here. Okay, now remembering this is a heterozygous cross. We've taken 2 parents that are heterozygous for both of those traits. We've crossed them together. The red circles show us all of the offspring that are going to express as yellow and round. They're going to express the dominant trait for both genes, even though many of these genotypes are different. You'll notice a couple are the same, so this one and this one are the same, depending on whether the little y big R came from this parent and the big Y little r came from this parent, or the other way around. So you can have the male and female swapping roles and they'll create the same gamete, and those will be placed in different boxes. But there's only one way to get big Y, big Y, big R, big R. You need that exact gamete from one parent and that exact gamete from the other. So 9 of the offspring, just as we discussed, will be round and yellow. 1, 2, 3 will be yellow and wrinkly. 1, 2, 3 will be green and round, and only one of those 16 combinations of alleles can produce an offspring that is both green and wrinkly. So 1 out of 16. So this is our phenotypic ratio. Okay, so 9 yellow round to 3 yellow wrinkled to 3 green round to 1 green wrinkled. Whereas with our monohybrid punnett squares, we had 3 to 1. 3 of the 4 offspring would express the dominant trait, even though one of them is homozygous dominant and 2 are heterozygous. And then you would have 1 out of 4 of those individuals expressing the recessive trait during a heterozygous cross. Okay, that is a dihybrid punnett square. Exactly the same type of question, just with a new context. I couldn't pick a photo, so I just picked them all. Why not? In Dalmatians, black spots are dominant to brown spots. So in order for a dog to have brown spots, as we can see here, that individual would have to inherit 2 of the brown alleles. Short hair is also dominant to long hair. So again, this is a long-haired Dalmatian, and that requires 2 recessive traits. Recessive alleles, sorry. A breeder has 2 dogs that are heterozygous with respect to both traits. So, what you need to do to write down the genotype of these dogs is first decide on a letter for each of those traits. So you might go to the letter B for spots, and you might go to H for hair. I mean, obviously they're both hair related, but whatever works for you. Okay, and for them to both be heterozygous with respect to both traits, well, they both have to carry a black allele, okay, and because that's dominant, we'll give it a capital B, and a brown allele, so because that's recessive, we give it a lowercase b. So they are both big B, little b, And then next to that, we write the alleles they carry for the second trait. Short hair is dominant to long hair, so capital H for short hair, dominant to lowercase h for long hair. I avoided using the word S because big S and little s can be confusing. So both of their genotypes, using the letters I've decided there, would be big B, little b, big H, little h. So we're doing a dihybrid cross, so we're looking at two genes, and we're crossing two individuals with the same genotype. Okay, using those letters, you want to figure out what 4 possible gametes could be produced by each of those parent dogs. So 2 of them will contain the brown allele, 2 will contain the black, 2 will contain the long, and 2 will contain the short, but all in different combinations. So it literally will look exactly like this, but you're substituting the letters out. Okay, so you would be drawing a punnett square for this dihybrid cross representing the expected genotypic outcomes of the F1 generation. Well, the genotypic outcomes are exactly what we find in the middle of the punnett square. These are the genotypes of the offspring given the fertilization event of the gametes on the sides. So these are the official finalized genotypes of all the potential fertilization events that could occur between these two parents. Okay, there should be 4 gamete combos on each side and 16 possible combinations. What is the expected phenotypic ratio for F1? Well, if we have complete dominance, 2 alleles, and a dihybrid cross between 2 heterozygous individuals, we will get the outcome 9:3 to 3:1. That is just simply a ratio we need to memorize or learn how to deduce from a punnett square like this. One thing that everyone gets wrong, a huge misconception in creating these punnett squares, is that every gamete will have one allele from each gene. Okay, so he will have one version of the hair length allele and one version of the spot color. Okay, or you will not get a gamete with 2 Ys or 2 Rs. So every gamete gets one piece of information for each gene. We know that because alleles on the 2 chromatids in the final stage of meiosis are segregated into separate gametes. You only have one version of every gene in the gametes so that when they meet another gamete, they will produce an organism with 2. Okay, so every single gamete will have one version of one letter and one version of the other. You don't get any RRs or YYs in the gametes. I hope that's very clear. Have a go at this one in your book. Okay, see if you can answer the questions. Again, it's really just structured exactly the same as the last question, and we will talk about it on Google Meet tomorrow. All right, good luck.